Good morning to all of you out there. It's Monday, April 26, 2021. Welcome to the program agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and channel 250 for high definition. You can also watch us via facebook.com/onenewsph, and on YouTube, just enter in onenewsph. And if you download the Signal Play app, you can watch us on the go. And just make sure that you take advantage of the PLDT home fiber internet connection, because that will guarantee that you get good reception, good signal, good service. And that is what we use. Here live here from Lipa City, sa mga tiga Lipa, mga tiga Batangas, mga tiga Palawan, especially my friends in Coron. Welcome to the program. Also our friends in Puerto Princesa, our friends in Baguio, and of course Ilocos. Alam niyo po, Makatiyong pa ako nung bata ako. I was quite a wanderer in my younger days, and that is why I have been from Apari. I've not quite reached, made it to Holo. I've made it as far as Zamboanga, and I've lived in many places. Okay, so that is why I can rightfully claim I have friends all over the place. Now, if you, by any chance, I'm hoping that because I'm in a studio, sort of studio that we built here in my place, if by any chance you hear the buzzing of aircraft, kasi po malapit po kami sa isang airbase dito sa Lipa City, and many of the air cadets of the Philippine Air Force do their training here. Yeah, ewan ko, mukhang tora-tora pa yung gamit nila kasi napakaingay. And then pag nag-formation sila, para silang World War II. Anyway, we will continue with the program. And for those of you wondering, sino ba ang bisita ni Cito today? Our first guest will be Mr. Eckie Gonzales, chairman of the Medical City, and I requested for the team agenda to invite Mr. Gonzales over because he's how do I put it? He is not a doctor, if I remember correctly. He is more of a, anong tawag nga nila doon? Hindi naman economist, but, he's a business, how do you call, expert, and it gives you a different perspective. What does a business expert see in terms of the future of hospitals, the challenges of hospitals, especially private hospitals? Because I was quite alarmed when Mayor Joy Belmonte mentioned in our interview last week that there are actually hospitals that are now up for sale. And our other guest, Dr. a slightly smaller hospital, but there are many other hospitals, especially in the provinces, etc., that are now struggling because of COVID and because of PhilHealth. After our interview with with Mr. Eckie Gonzales, we will speak with Dr. Tricia Guison-Bautista, family physician, and if I remember correctly, she is with the Rizal Medical Center. Kamusta sa mga kaibigan natin sa Rizal Medical Center? Long time no see. Let's keep it that way for the time being during COVID. But Dr. Tricia will guide us through how to deal with COVID before you even get COVID. Kasi marami po nag-uusap-usap, marami mga sabi-sabi, ever since COVID hit, you can just imagine all the medications or suggestions you've heard from friends, etc., about what to take, what to drink, how to live. Yung iba po medyo malaalbularyo, and yung iba naman medyo desperado. So let's ask a doctor, a physician, what works, what doesn't work, and what alternatives do we have. But before that, the time is 8:05. Let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star and get a glimpse of the news. National Task Force Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Carlito Galvez Jr. said about 7 to 8 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines could be delivered next month. Galvez said most of these deliveries were delayed batches due to logistical challenges faced by vaccine manufacturers and COVAX. COVAX is the World Health Organization led facility that is in charge of distributing vaccines to nations. Okay, so now, now that we have a severe shortage, and in many places we've run out of COVID-19 vaccines, the strategy is to promise again that by June or July, there will be millions. I'm sorry, I respect Secretary Galvez, and I know that he's trying his best, he's doing his best. But you know, Secretary Galvez is not the only person running the show. There are other players in the game, and one has even dropped the ball. Sabi nga ng ating Secretary of Foreign Affairs, someone dropped the ball. Even our ambassador to the United States, medyo nakapagtimpi lang. No? But in any case, I'm just putting this there, okay? Putting it out. You know, when you have a shortage, the solution is you fill the shortage. But obviously, the government can't fill it. At least for the entire month of May, mukhang zero. Because now they're talking about June and July. And now it's the fault of the manufacturers and COVAX because of logistical issues daw. When you say logistics, this is delivery, this is transport, this is basically getting it from point A to point B. Ang dami naman eroplano ng Cebu Pacific, ang daming eroplano ng Philippine Airlines. If you really, where there is a will, there is a way. The problem is some people got lost along the way. Let's move on. In other news, spread of the virus in Metro Manila is on a clear downward trajectory, says research group Okta. Their monitoring for the week of April 18 to 24 showed a reproduction number below 1 or 0.93. However, Okta also noted that hospital occupancy is still high within the NCR plus bubble. Okay, yan po ngayon ang pinag-uusapan. I think the Metro Manila Mayor's Council will have a meeting tomorrow, and according to the presidential spokesperson, the parameters for deciding whether we will continue with MECQ or go to GCQ is number one, the number of COVID cases, the reproduction rate, the hospital capacity, and the continued pressure on the economy and the survival of citizens. So, pag suma total ninyan, if you add it all up, it's going to be MECQ, I bet you. Because the hospitals, according to some of the doctors I monitored, they're not easing up. The cases keep coming in, and the reproduction rate is still at 1. They want it to be at 8. Medyo, it will be, I think, in another week, it will probably go down, but that doesn't mean it stops, because the minute you change, things change again. Parang basketball. Baguhin mo yung referee, iba laro. Baguhin mo yung player, iba laro. Okay, meanwhile, Interior Secretary Eduardo Año is urging all community pantry organizers to work with local government units and police. Año explains that the government encourages the Bayanihan spirit driven by these pantries, but activity should be properly coordinated with officials to prevent an outbreak. In an ideal world where everybody plays nice, that is really what we should be doing. And I support Secretary Año in his concern for infections. Until somebody in government comes up with a better solution, okay, I don't think if imposing conditions is going to work, especially when a few people from the military and the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflicts started attacking the pantry organizer. So, in other words, bago tayo mag-impose ng mga ganyang suggestion or magrekomenda, tingnan muna nyo, kaya ba ninyo? Okay? Because, it's ideal. Secretary Anyo's suggestion is good. It's valid. Okay? I don't challenge it. Okay? The thing is it possible? Is it workable? Try it and then use it as an example. Kasi yan na nga po problema eh. Mahirap yung ganitong sitwasyon na naunahan na ng when you've already had precedent, okay? Medyo people find it difficult to trust when they have been violated. And finally, some senators say that the gag order on Lieutenant General Antonio Parlade is not enough and that he must be fired as spokesman for the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-LCAC. Okay, so because the senator said first, sabi ni Senator Joel Villanueva, bro, i-defund na lang natin. 19 billion. Akala ko po last week, 3 billion lang yung kanilang budget. Nawaw na nga ako sa 3 billion. Turns out, this organization is 19 billion. For what? If you spend, and please read my column today in the Philippine Star, okay, Revolution, it's the title, and it talks about the time I spent with President Joseph Estrada, where he had an option. Kasi ako po yung nagli-lead ng Bible study for 4 years in Tanay. And one day, lumapit sa kanya si FPJ and si Loren Legarda para humingi ng advice and tulong to protest the elections, I think, of 2004. Yung laban kay Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. And nagtanong si Erap sa mga ka-Bible study niya, anong tingin ninyo? And everybody asked me. And I said, Mr. President, meron ka bang 200 million peso check dyan sa ilalim ng plato mo? Huh? Ano sinasabi mo? Wala. Wala pala eh. Di wala. Kung meron kang 200 million, mananalo kaya kayo sa protesta. Presidente yung kalaban ninyo. Nakakulong ka. Etc. So sabi ko, alam mo, if you can get 10% of 200 million, 20 million, and you spend it buying carabaos, goats, pigs, chickens, ducks, etc., and pinamudmud mo sa lahat ng mga farmers sa paligid, nako, baka ikaw na ang gawing Saint Joseph ng mga farmers. And any case, so, nagkwekwento, umuwi na kami. Mamaya ka mo, after I think about 2 weeks, Joseph Estrada, ERAP, announced his revolution kontra gutom. Ayun. If we spent 19 billion pesos and funded it to different organizations who give out all of this, baka mas makatulong pa tayong matigil yung communist insurgency kasi hindi naman love ng mga farmer sa mga komunista kasi sila po pinagbibintangan ni Parlade yung community pantry. Namimigay yung community pantry, yung Communist Party nangongolekta ng revolutionary tax eh. Yun ang habulin mo. Huwag kang maghabol dito sa Metro Manila. Anyway, that's the sentiment of the senators. Let's move on. Excuse me. Let's move on to our first guest. He serves as the CEO of the Medical City. Also for the same company, he is the same company for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. He's also the director of PSI Healthcare Development Services Corporation, Mr. Eckie Gonzales. Chairman, good morning, sir.
Morning. Good morning, Chief.
Okay, I in my intro I mentioned that I specifically requested that you be invited because I want to bring in a businessman, MBA perspective into this situation where hospitals have become have ended up having to catch the burden of COVID-19, and the government is saying you have to increase your COVID beds by 30%, blah 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 blah. So in terms of a business and MBA perspective or PhD, whatever your your levels are, what's your take on all of this, Mr. Gonzalez?
Uh, Actually, right now, at least in terms of medical city, our capacity absorption for COVID is closer to 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and still, as of this point, we've had to sort of like limit access to the emergency rooms because we don't have enough ICU beds, which is the main bottleneck here.
Mm-hmm.
If you do a flashback to a year ago,
Yeah.
uh, that was the major constraint, and the emergency room ended up becoming an ICU ward.
Mm-hmm.
Now the government at that time said we're going to designate more hospitals as COVID hospitals. So you have East Avenue, then you have PGH increasing its number of beds, and others. Apparently, that was not enough because we all got caught short uh, in in in, in March of this year when cases shot up to double what they were averaging last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really has been the major fear, that we don't have enough treatment capacity. Now, how to solve that issue? Last year, PhilHealth stepped in early on and said, we're going to reimburse everybody in the beginning for all your costs, okay? Which I
Yeah.
think was a bit overblown. Then they said, we're going to limit the reimbursements, okay? But the problem with limiting the reimbursement is the severe and critical cases, moderate to severe and critical, where a lot of the expenses, because you're have to do a lot more treatment, hemoperfusions, and all this extra dosage of patient care, more nurses, as an example, the reimbursement factors haven't been enough.
Mm-hmm.
So hospitals are struggling with two things. One is facilities, and second is reimbursements. Okay. So in the case of the facilities side, the way we see it is the government has said, all right, we'll open more ICU beds.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they said we'll open more moderate beds so you can try to move people out, but we still have a big constraint on ICU capacity. And the way to do that is to get more funding into facilities for what's called like negative pressure rooms,
Mm-hmm.
so you can circulate out the air from COVID. And those cost money. And to the extent that the government can, or the government banks can provide that kind of funding, then we can be more flexible in terms of capacity management. The second issue is reimbursements. Um, you can have the DOH say move up to 30, 35%, but if you're not getting paid, you are going to continue to be running a deficit in terms of reimbursement for COVID. So I don't know where the PhilHealth financials are. It's been a little cloudy as of this point. There's been a recent commitment to try to do some reimbursements, but they're only for COVID related, but they're still past dues for receivables that go before COVID that
Mm-hmm.
we are still awaiting some reimbursement from. The other solution, and I think it could be a compatible solution here also, is to allow for something called balance billing. When you get reimbursed for COVID, it's under something called no balance billing, meaning you can't
Mm-hmm.
bill about that. But if you want to absorb more patient capacity and get more financial wherewithal to the hospital, you should allow more balance billing, at least for this period of time. Um, so I talked about facilities. I'm talking about financial lubrication. I guess the last part here is having to do with the manpower, and this is mainly nurses. And in the case of
Mhm.
nurses, you have higher nurse to patient ratios for the more severe COVID, and we have problems with our nurses because uh, they're being pulled overseas without the as much of the requisite tests and certifications that they had before because other countries are suffering. And second, because of K2, we're into the second year of minimal graduates from nursing. And that has a major adverse impact in terms of the ability to staff. So everyone is going after the same pool. So the way to expand the pool is to allow maybe nurses who haven't taken the boards to participate more in in in, um, in the care of patients. Number two, uh, to uh, to provide additional incentives for nurses to be hired to staff the different hospitals, including the private sector, which was also done last year.
Mhm.
So those two elements can expand capacity for nurses. And then also, as in the case of vaccination that's going on right now, to bring in other types of ancillary medical, like medical technologists or even midwives, to support that whole process of making sure that our whole country is inoculated against COVID. So those three aspects, I think, have to be focused on by government.
Okay, now, Eckie, may I know what is the situation at Medical City? Because 1 year ago, or 1 year and 1 month ago, I remember that Medical City and St. Luke's were the first two hospitals to raise the flag and say, "Sorry, we're filled up. We're up to capacity, and the driveways filled up." What is the situation in Medical City? Because government is saying things have improved. The Octa Research Group is saying it has improved. What's happening at Medical City?
Okay, well, first, I think the active cases have gone down. I mean, if you see the daily reports, used to be averaging around 12,000 for 4 days, maybe 2 weeks ago, and now maybe closer to 9,000, a bit
Mhm.
above 9,000 per day. So that's you're seeing some impact of the lockdown. I think you're also going to be seeing some impact from increased vaccination, because what happens is over time the elderly and the comorbids get less going into the severe and COVID mode and having to fill up uh, the ICUs of the different hospitals. In the case of Medical City, as you know, Cito, we were ground zero with
Yeah.
the Green Hills case in March. And in the early on, for the first 2 weeks, we had like 30% of all COVID cases
Mhm.
in the country. Uh, where we are today is, so we've gone up to 25% capacity of dedicated to COVID. But despite that, uh, 3 weeks ago, when this whole thing started, late March, early April, we've had to effectively also close our doors because we don't have enough ICU bed capacity, as well as moderate, moderate versus severe and critical. We should go to ICU bed capacity. Today, what we're seeing now is there's surges and pauses, but we still have ICU bed capacity issues. Our moderate bed capacity has sort of eased up. And also, what we have done and what other hospitals have done is they've created home care solutions.
Mhm.
So patients can be taken care of at home with oxygen support, with also some IV and some remdesivir, for example, or dexamethasone given to them until they really have difficulty of breathing. In which case, now they have to go to a hospital, and so
What
that's how
what's
also we've expanded capacity.
Yeah, what's the difference in terms of cost to the patient between home care and staying or going to the hospital and staying in the hospital?
Well, I think it's definitely much cheaper
Hmm.
I maybe a quarter to a third of the cost of being in a hospital. You don't have to pay for a room. You don't have to pay for a nurse. You do have to maybe have some support care, but this is not of the same kind of ratios. You also have support at home. So to the extent that this can be managed through home care, we try to get our patients. So for example, if we have 25% of our capacity dedicated to COVID in the hospitals, we can effectively create another 25% of capacity by just managing patients at home. And that's what
Okay.
we're doing today.
Eki, we'll just go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll carry on with the conversation, and I'd just like to pick it up from there regarding the status of your healthcare workers and vaccinations for them, etc. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, as well as on Facebook.com/OneNewsPH, on YouTube, One News PH, and the Signal Play app via PLDT Home Fiber Unlimited. Okay, let's go back to Mr. Eckie Gonzales, CEO of the Medical City. And Eki, we were talking about the virus concern. You're at 25% capacity for COVID. Now, what about staff? What about nurses and doctors? Because Jim Almora of the Hospital Association mentioned that that is the biggest challenge. You can put all the beds you want, but if no one's going to be there to man the floor, it's all useless.
Well, just to give a historical perspective, Cito, in 2010, there were like 200,000 nursing grads in the Philippines. Maybe 175,000 took the bar, and maybe a third passed, so maybe 60,000. And then half of that went abroad. So I think the last numbers I saw were like 2019. We only had something like maybe 30,000 graduates, and maybe half would pass. So we don't have as much. We're trying to ramp up, and then the last 2 years we had K-12, so it's very difficult to get nursing graduates if you don't have supply. So it really is a difficult issue today. And then now you have the pressures of an aging population in the West with COVID, getting our nurses, and pressures from COVID within the hospitals to be able to sustain that. But in terms of our hospital, I think you have to remember that there are also non-COVID patients, and not just COVID patients. We have to support. And now this year versus last year, we have everybody was so afraid of coming in. Now they come in, but they're sicker. So we also have to maintain support for them. And the COVID support ratios are much higher than the non-COVID support ratios. So we end up having to pull from the non-COVID areas to handle surges within the COVID area. So it's a big issue for us. I don't know how you can pull in more nurses except for the government to create more incentives, financial incentives to help the private sector to do that. And also other support
Are
auxiliary services.
are the nurses in the non-COVID section of Medical City willing to be transferred to the COVID or be pulled, as you called it, pulled to the COVID area, or are they kicking and screaming and only under the threat of losing their jobs to them? Because I can just imagine it's like, no way in hell am I going to go in there if it's going to cost me my life.
Hindi naman ganon. We have a collaborative organization,
Mhm.
and the real president and CEO, Dr. Ramos, orchestrates this whole process. I'm the
Mhm.
chairman of the board. Okay,
Okay,
and
okay, sorry.
okay, and what happens here is there are continuing conversations between our institutes for cardiovascular or cancer and the critical care units of the department handling COVID, so that they can help support the endeavor to try to manage COVID patients if there's some slack.
Are
But it's
are
really a stretch. It's really a
Yeah,
stretch.
are the staff are all the healthcare staff or frontliners of Medical City fully vaccinated?
Okay, so we had vaccinations take place as the surge happened in March.
Hmm.
Okay, so we got maybe 90%. It's a large number vaccinated, but there were still that guys that missed out on the vaccination. What was clear from the vaccination was we did have maybe 3 to 5% get COVID during the surge. However, none of that was severe or critical.
Hmm.
So, despite the fact that this was done in the middle of the vaccination process, there was no strong immunity kicking in yet. The nurses and the doctors and the staff were still able to handle both the vaccination as well as the surge in COVID. So now this is sort of slackened off because the vaccination aspect is kicking in.
Are they
Uh,
double dosed?
uh, so they got AstraZeneca and Sinovac. So
Hmm.
Sinovac for most, and then AstraZeneca for the balance. The
For the first
Sinovac guys,
for the
yeah,
for
the
the first
Sinovac guys,
inoculation?
yeah, the Sinovac guys who had their second dose. The AstraZeneca guys should have it a bit later because Sinovac's like 2 weeks, and AstraZeneca is like 4 weeks to a month.
Hmm.
So that process is taking
Okay.
place, but you do get protection, around 70 to 80% protection,
Okay. Final
and
question.
no mortality for
Great. That's great news. Final question, Eki. You came up, or the Medical City came up with this home care program, and apparently it makes full, complete sense because less staffing, less cost, and better for the occupancy rates and availability of beds. Now, other than that, is there something that you would recommend to all hospitals and to the national government to adapt to make things better?
Okay, you had asked me for a lot of suggestions before, so we gave that. I think my thing about what we do here is we should have more transparency on data and information that comes out of the DOH with respect to how our vaccination is progressing. And some of the issues relating to data capture don't make sense. Like, for example, you had a 5 times multiplication of active cases over the span of 1 month, and yet the number of patients deemed severe or critical hardly moved. So you do have to clean up the data and you report it transparently. So whether it's Okta or other whole of nation groups can provide support in terms of coming up with better solutions for capacity management and handling COVID.
Okay, because the data tells you or gives you a basis of projecting your response.
Yeah, and for example, if you drill down from Metro Manila all the way to the LGUs, you'll find out where the concentrations are, and you
Mhm.
can say, all right, I'm going to focus my vaccination on these areas. But unless that's very transparent and given regularly, you're not able to track that consistently.
Do you believe that there is a system in place? Because I get the impression that they're just gathering reports of laboratories. Laboratories are sending their results, but they're not indicating, okay, it's here, he got it from here, and this is the, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the details. Is there really a system in place?
Well, I don't know. There is a system. Apparently, they clean up the data maybe every week in terms of the laboratory reporting. But how does one explain 200,000 active cases going down to 100,000 or less in 1 week? How is it possible to do that? Is it just statistical, or there are actual reports for this thing happening? It's very hard to do suggestions if you don't have full transparency in terms of reporting. And if you do better reporting, then you can refocus your efforts on certain categories, on certain geographical areas that need more help. So that's all I'm suggesting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Eki. And please stay strong, stay healthy, and please join us on a more regular basis when you have the time. I know you have a lot on your mind, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Same to you.
Okay, that's Mr. Eckie Gonzales. He is the chairman of the board of the Medical City. Okay, yung pong data capture, data sharing, data transparency, essentially, in simple words, it's information. And I'm reminded of a small story, short story. A Japanese executive once told me, Cito-san, you must fight very hard to get right information from your group so that we get correct information so we know how to support you. Kasi may mga taong ayaw ilabas yung nega, ayaw ilabas yung masyado silang positive, kinokontrol, feeling that if we control the data, we can control the outcome. Not correct. Always say truth. Okay, let's go to our next guest. Less controversial, more informative and useful for all of you. We have with us a family physician, UST Hospital. Ay, sorry, UST Hospital. Akala ko medical CR, Rizal Medical. Dr. Tricia Guison-Bautista is a family physician at the UST Hospital. She's also a faculty member of the UST Faculty of Medicine Surgery. Wow, ang bigat ng ating guest, Dr. Tricia Guison-Bautista. Good morning, Doktora.
Good morning, sir. It's a privilege, no, para mag-guest po sa inyo. But I would like to make a correction. I am also a consultant in Rizal Medical Center, a medical center.
You saved my face.
Yes. So you're correct, sir.
Okay, Doctora, the reason I asked our common friend, Dr. Mike Sarte, sabi ko, Mike, please help me. Help me find someone who can discuss alternatives or backup solutions in the face of COVID. Kasi marami na po ako, I've been hearing so many magic potion remedies and ideas, and it's getting scary. But I also heard last week in our interview na with a mayor, nang ginawa nila, which I myself have been writing about, ginawa nila, they went full out on their anti-flu vaccine, and they went full out on their anti-pneumonia vaccine, pati na nga raw yung ano ba yun, cervical cancer, anong tawag nun?
Anti-cervical cancer.
Yeah, vaccine, tinuloy na rin, sabi nila, kasi para at least mabawasan yung posibilidad. Now, please help us here, Doktora. In the face of COVID-19 and the fear of people to go to hospitals, or because hospitals are overloaded, aside from home care, like Mr. Eckie Gonzales shared, no, with Medical City, what are our options? What do we have available that an ordinary Filipino can do?
All right. Sa totoo lang po, alam na natin ang mga basic things to keep ourselves healthy.
Mm.
But I must say, no, it's simple but quite challenging para gawin yon. Medyo mahirap. Alam na natin yon that we need to eat healthy food. So masusustansyang pagkain. It starts with food also because that's something we do every day. Eat.
Mm.
So kailangan right choice of food. Mas maraming gulay and there's always fruit in every meal. And then there's less sugar, less fat, yung mga saturated fat, less salt, para lalo na hindi tumaas ang ating mga blood pressure. So in other words, balanced diet po siya. Okay? So after eating well, then we need to do some physical activity. Ito na yung medyo struggle yung marami, no? But the physical activity doesn't really have to be an exercise regimen. It can be just mga paggalaw-galaw lang sa bahay, household chores, maglinis-linis, gardening. Okay, these simple things no can help. 30 minutes a day, most days of the week, like 3 to 5 times in a week. If hindi mo kaya yung 30 minutes na diretso, pwede mong i-break ito ng 10 minutes each time. So you do it 3 times a day, yung 10 minutes lang na burst of activity. Of course, some would do it mga yoga or watch YouTube para lang sumabay sa isang dance, no? Sa mga dance videos. So yan po ang mga pinaka-importante. If you're smoking, now is the time to stop it because that is a risk factor. All right?
Papasok muna ako, doktora,
Sige
ha?
po. Sige
Mga
po.
kaibigan, dati po akong smoker. Dekada ang haba ng aking paninigarilyo. Now I have COPD, Chronic Obstructive Pulmonary Disease. Miya't-miya po, 3 to 4 times a day naka-inhaler ako. Mahal siya. Pagkatapos pag lumala, kailangan bumira ng mahal na gamot. Antibiotic. So, inuunahan ko na kayo. Tama si Dr. Tricia, now is the time to quit. Okay, continue, Doktora.
Congratulations, sir. I laud you for advocating for this one because smoking is the number one preventable cause of many diseases. Okay, so balik naman tayo, kung merong naninigarilyo, baka meron din umiinom. So, lalo ngayon, pag nasa bahay lang, yung iba, pang pa-relax nila yon, pero dapat moderation. Alright? And then, kailangan din nabawasan ng stress. Okay? Paano yon? Kailangan adequate sleep and rest. 8 hours of sleep. Medyo mahirap gawin yun, no? Kasi may iba nawiwili po manood talaga ng TV, mag-internet, mag-games. So, nagkukulang na sila ng pagtulog. Okay? Ngayon, yung iba naman, nakikinig sa iba-ibang news, nai-stress, or walang connection sa labas. I think apart from the physical health, ang pinaka-importante din is mental and emotional health. And that is something that is now parang nagcha-challenge din sa atin ngayon. No? May mga kalungkutan, may mga nako-confuse. And so part of being healthy is also meditating, learning how to do breathing exercises, parang relaxation techniques. Dapat marunong tayong medyo magbasa-basa ng mga may mga positive messages. And of course, spiritual health is part of it. Napatunayan na po yan na ebidensya as part of our holistic care. So, yan po yung mga paraan. But of course, iba ngayon sa pandemya, yan, basic po yan. But now in the pandemic, I think if there is a way for you to stay at home, I know this is quite controversial also because if you need to go out para magtrabaho, ibang storya po yun. But if hindi kailangan the unnecessary travel, just stay at home. And if there are people who are going out, then make sure you are doing all the minimum health protocols. So alam na natin yon, yung mga mask, hand washing, hand hygiene, face shield if you need to, and of course, physical distancing. Or
Doktora, yeah, let me ask you about that. No? Kasi may nakita ko sa isang hardware. Foreigner siya eh. Nakita ko naka-face shield siya. Nakababa talaga. Hindi katulad ng iba na nakataas. Katulad ko, kuminsan natataas ko dahil di ko mabasa. Pero siya, nakababa yung face shield niya, pero yung mask niya nandito lang. And tinitingnan ko, sabi ko, well, it makes sense because yung face shield naman niya nando doon and yung mask niya tinatakpan niya. Pero biglang lumabas itong lekat na itong airborne disease daw itong COVID-19. What do you have to say about that?
Alright, yung sinabi niyo po, unang pansinin ko, dapat tama, may mask ka pero dapat tama ang pagsuot nito. No? It should cover the nose and the mouth. Alright? Between the mask and the shield, it's the mask that is most important. So konting karagdagan lang yung protection na binibigay ng shield, pero mask is the most important. And dapat maganda ang fit nito, no? Wala masyadong lumalabas na mga hangin, no? Alright, so tight fit siya. Yung sabi niyong airborne, okay, wala pa talagang official na abiso sa atin ang WHO or ang CDC. But when we say it's airborne, siguro ito ay may mga certain activities, no? Ito yung coughing, sneezing, yung shouting, singing, okay?
Nako, karaoke.
Karaoke, yun po. Lumalayo yung particles, yung virus particles. Okay? And when it's crowded or congested, when the place is crowded and congested, the airborne particles are higher. Okay? But it does not necessarily mean that it is really airborne. I mean, it's really flying to you, no?
Oh,
yung concentration.
Hindi sila microscopic aswang.
Opo.
Na may
Hindi siya
mga
parang, it's still droplet. So
Okay.
pag sinabing droplet, usually po, ang layo ng ililipad niyan ay mga 2 meters. Kaya ang advisory po sa atin na if we can, as much as possible, be at least 1 to 2 meters away from someone. Pag hindi natin kaya yon, then that's where the face shield comes in. Okay?
Okay, now, Dr. Tricia, ito namang mga, yun nga, nabanggit ko kanina kasi alam mo, kung mali naman ako, titigilan ko na, no? Pero I am under the impression that because wala pang vaccine, nagkinapos tayo sa vaccine, walang available, sabi ko, magpabakuna na muna kayo for flu, anti-flu and pneumonia. Kasi kahit na hindi yan for COVID, diyan nag-uumpisa yung COVID din Nagkakaroon ka ng flu-like symptoms, tapos magkakaroon ka ng pneumonia, parang ako naman nag-guesstimate lang, ano? And there are other ideas. What makes sense or are logical? What is illogical?
All right. Malapit na kayo maging doktor, sir. So your hypothesis is almost correct, right? So kung hindi po kayo part ng priority list sa pagbabakuna, it will take some time bago ka mabakunahan against COVID. I think it is also a good time to invest on the flu vaccine and the pneumococcal vaccine. So dalawang klase pa po ito, no? So una, yung flu vaccine, yes, it helps us eliminate yung exposure mo or yung chance mo na makakuha pa ng trangkaso dahil masyadong medyo parehas yung symptoms ng flu at saka ng COVID. So magandang matanggap po ang flu vaccine. This is done every year. So every year siya kasi yung strain nung taon na nakaraan, idinadagdag yon every time. So that's how it works. No? Meron pa yung Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere. Iba yung flu vaccine ng pang-Amerika at saka dito sa Australia. No? So it depends on parang may tinatawag dyan, epidemiology pa. Ngayon, yung pneumococcal vaccine, ito naman, laban ito sa pneumonia. Okay? Dalawang klase rin po ang pneumococcal vaccine. Okay? So, hindi ko na masyadong pahihirapan yon. Pero napatunayan nila kung natanggap mo yung dalawa, syempre parang mas maganda yung epekto nito sa ating immune system versus isa lang doon ang matanggap mo. Now, ito, wala namang 100% all the time. Sa lahat ng bakuna po, no? Walang 100% guarantee. But, malaki yung chance ang hindi ka mao-ospital. Kung sakali mang dapuan ka nun, maaaring mild lang ang symptoms mo. So dahil nag-build yung katawan mo ng antibody, yung panlaban, no, soldier. May mga soldiers na ngayon sa loob ng katawan pag umatake yung virus or yung germs, o pag umatake ka, mikrobyo, meron na-identify nung soldier sa loob ng katawan mo na, uy, ito na siya. Ito yung dating tinusok sa akin na dapat kong train yung katawan ko para labanan yon. So,
Okay.
ready ka na. No? Ready na
Okay.
yung...
We'll go for a quick break, Doktora, and when we come back, let's carry on kasi may mga nagsabi sa akin, i-check mo muna kung available o hindi available, etc. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, and with us is Dr. Tricia Guison-Bautista of the UST Hospital. She is a family physician, also a consultant of the Rizal Medical Center. Dr. Tricia, may nag-text na kagad, tinatanong, how often do you need to have the pneumonia vaccine? Kasi may mga nadidinig tayong merong vaccine na one shot good for 5 years. Ewan ko kung flu yun or pneumonia. Could you explain that aspect, Doktora?
Okay po, ayoko masyadong makomplicate ito, no? Pero ang maganda po kasi ay mauna yung tinatawag na PCV13. So there are two kinds, the 13 and the 23. So dahil 13, mas nauna yun sa number, no? So yung 13, kasi sabing ganun yan, no? Pero para lang maalala ng tao, 13 goes ahead of 23. So they say the best combination is you start with the 13. Okay? If nauna sa'yo yung 13, after 1 year, you can take the 23, the PPSC 23. Dahil yun ang nakita nilang pag-aaral na magandang kombinasyon at timing. Okay? Ngayon, kung sakaling nauna na yung 23, okay, as long as there is a 1 year interval, you can now go and proceed with your 13. But after some time, after 1 year again, okay, you can take the 23 again. So, mahirap, no? Pang-doktor na to, no? Pero both can actually be taken, the 13 first and then the 23.
Okay.
Now, nagawa mo yung 23, you can take again the 13, but they say it is best to close it again with another 23, provided there is a 5 years, actually, 5 years interval or more from your last 23. Okay? Pero, sir, ano lang, no? Ang pinaka-rekomendado ito talaga sa mga immunocompromised, the 13 especially, the 13. No? Ito yung mas mahal. Okay? Ito once in your lifetime mo lang iti-take. Okay? Once in your lifetime lang yung 13. So kahit mahal, okay lang yon kasi once lang naman mo yon i-inject sa'yo.
How much is mahal?
Really depends in the market, but roughly it's 4,000 up. Can be, well, sa ordinaryong Pilipino po, no? Hindi siya gano'n kadali.
Ay, naku po, mga kaibigan, baka sabihin nyo, mahal pala niyan, Kuya Cito. Hello, nakakabili kayo ng cellphone. Etong pneumonia vaccine, hindi pa ipaglalaban yung buhay ninyo. Madali yung kumita ng 4,000 o 5,000 miat-mia kung buhay kayo. Kung patay kayo, wala na. Anyway, Doktora, go ahead please.
Okay. Good analysis, sir, no? Cost analysis yan. Yung isa, mas mura-mura, but maybe you will take it once or twice in your lifetime. Now, for the 65 years old and above, once lang parehas po yon. So, yung isa 23, it's roughly maybe 2,000 and up, half the price maybe. So sabihin natin suma total less than 10,000 para sa dalawang bakuna. Alright? Pero meron namang panahon para ipag-ipunan kasi meron
isang taon.
Oo, may isang
1
taon
year.
ka.
Okay. Ngayon, that's for pneumonia, Doktora.
Yes po.
Okay, yung flu.
Yung flu po is really every year. Because as I said, yung strain, okay, na common dun sa taon na yon, idinadagdag nila sa bagong lalabas na bakuna. So, kaya po ito, ang expiration nito, bago matapos lang din ang taon or basta pag natapos ang taon ng 2021, ito ay good for 2021. For
Ayun. Oo. Kasi sabi sa akin noon ni Doc Mike Sits, hintayin mo na next year. Sabi ko, bakit ko hintayin next year? Wala. Kasi this was last year. This was about November last year. Kasi pag binabakuna mo, ulit ka na naman next year. Di hintayin mo na. So, okay,
Yes,
sabi
sir.
ko. Oo.
So yung flu is available usually at this time of the year, March. So that's for 2021. Tapos mag-e-expire po yan by January of 2022. So, well, of course, pwede pa rin naman kayong magpa-inject noon hanggang
Okay.
2022.
Ito po, may pahabol na tanong. Yun daw bang mga vitamin C overload and then all of this, yung mga turmeric, blah, 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 alin ba doon ang alam ninyong recommended by your physician?
Alright. Ang vitamin C is helpful, na? Especially kung hindi ka adequate na kumakain ng mga masusustansyang pagkain. Pero there is no use po for overload, yung mas madami than the recommended. So usually it's just 500 milligrams a day, maybe maximum na yung 1,000 kapag talagang may sakit ka because you cannot eat, no? Parang pang-substitute yun dahil hindi ka makakain. Pero wala pong napatunayang mga pag-aaral na pag nag-take ka nito ng more than that one, it will be helpful. At lagi po nating tatandaan ng anything that is also in excess can be harmful. Okay? So yung turmeric, napakitaan naman ito na meron din talaga itong protection for inflammation, etc. Okay? Pero ang problema lang sa turmeric, mahirap sukatin. Gaano kadaming turmeric ang kailangan mong inumin para ma-avail mo yung benefits na yon.
Tsaka kahirap isipilyo. Nagkukulay dilaw yung ipin mo.
So ibang problema naman po ang magkakaroon kayo, no? Pero yung iba, tinitake to as a drink, maybe that is a better alternative than just taking, any ordinary juice. Okay, so especially if these are the naturally made turmeric.
Yeah. Last question, Doktora. Are there any other vaccines outside of the flu vaccine and the pneumonia vaccine that I may not have brought to your attention but we should consider?
Okay, for adults po, yun talaga yung pinaka-importante. But of course, you can always add your anti-tetanus. Once in a while, you also get into some accidents, natutusok ka, natapilok ka, tumama yung paa mo somewhere sa bakal and something. That's something that you might want to consider. That's every 10 years.
Kamalas ko kasi allergic ako sa anti-tetanus vaccine.
Okay. So,
Kanya kailangan mag-ingat.
Ako, mag-ingat. Another is, kanina binanggit niyo po yung anti-cervical vaccine. Of course, these are for females. Okay? But then males can also avail of this one. But yung medyo bata-bata pa po ito. No? So, usually young adolescents, okay, up to 20s can avail of this one. So they will not cause or be carriers of this illness, yung cervical
yung papilo something.
Virus po. Opo, yes, correct, sir. Meron din siyempre para sa medyo may edad na yung bakuna para sa herpes zoster, kamag-anak ng chickenpox, no? So,
Mm.
kung kayo ay nagka-chickenpox dati, maaari itong ma-reactivate. And we don't want that to happen because sobrang sakit nito and minsan debilitating siya para sa mga may edad na. So, you
Mm.
might have to consider these things.
Okay.
Yeah, for now, I think that's about it.
Well, photo finish tayo, 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tricia. And please stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy. Thank you for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
It has been my pleasure. Maraming salamat po. Ingat din po kayo.
Okay, that's Dr. Tricia Guison-Bautista, family physician of the UST Hospital. So ayan po, no, tamang-tama. It's now the right time to get your anti-flu vaccine and talk to your doctors about this. Also, your pneumonia vaccine. It's not 100% the silver bullet, but it could make a difference on the outcome if you, God forbid, get COVID-19. I'm Cito Beltran, wishing you a great day, a happy day. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to read your Bible. Don't forget to pray. God bless you.